Welcome back. Arguably the biggest controversy stemming from the overall illegal immigration law debate is the thought that someone could be profiled based on their race.
Right. The governor says all along now that racial profiling won't be tolerated. The law reads in part, a law enforcement official or agency may not solely consider race, color, or national origin in implementing requirements of this subsection, except to the extent permitted by the U.S. Constitution. Another sticking point, the term reasonable suspicion. Many people say there's no definition for that in this context. The law says in part, when there is reasonable suspicion, a reasonable attempt shall be made when practicable to determine the immigration status of the person, except if the determination may hinder or obstruct an investigation. And there's also a federal law in the books for illegal immigration, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, and added Section 28287G in 1996. The Department of Homeland Security teamed up with state and local law enforcement to let designated officers trained by ICE enforce the immigration laws. Now, they can investigate violent crimes, human smuggling, gangs, and organized crime. Also sex-related offenses, drug smuggling, and money laundering, and they can give support in remote locations. California also has an illegal immigration law on the books that some say is just as tough as 1070.
Yeah, reading that state's penal code, it focuses mostly on how to handle illegal immigrants after they've been arrested. By now, you've heard of cities around the country boycotting our state because of Arizona's law. You've got Seattle, Austin, San Francisco, among those vowing not to spend their money here. And that could total millions of dollars in lost revenue. Los Angeles and San Diego are also part of the boycott. But as News 4 Tucson's Naomi Pescovitz explains, some say they should reconsider.
When the City of Angels decided to pull the plug on Arizona, AZ Corporation Commissioner Gary Pierce pointed out a true boycott would leave part of LA in the dark.
If they're truly going to have conviction, they ought to then dispose of that power and be prepared not to use it.
Pierce says, and LA power officials agree, 25% of the power used to light up LA comes from right here in Arizona. So Pierce sent LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa a letter saying, quote, "If an economic boycott is truly what you desire, I will be happy to encourage Arizona utilities to renegotiate your power agreements so Los Angeles no longer receives any power from Arizona-based generation. I am confident that Arizona's utilities would be happy to take those electrons off your hands." Mayor Villaraigosa fired back, saying, quote, he will not respond to threats from a state which has isolated itself from the America that values freedom, liberty, and basic civil rights. Others on the Los Angeles City Council add LA has partial ownership of that power, so it can't just be switched off. But fighting California boycotts doesn't end at the power plants.
It's my sincere hope that we return the favor of boycotting them back.
For Brett Scott, that means canceling his summer trip to the Golden State.
Our favorite spot was San Diego, and sadly, they were the very first ones to attack Arizona's economy and livelihood.
Now Brett's changing his plans to fight back. I'm Naomi Pescovitz, News 4 Tucson.
On KVOA.com, we've linked a website that lists the cities and organizations boycotting Arizona. There's also a link to Gary Pierce's letter to LA's mayor.
Now to some interesting numbers showing just how divided the nation is over the immigration issue. A new NBC Telemundo Wall Street Journal poll out just today shows a clear divide on this. Overall, 61% of respondents favor our state's new law, 36% oppose it. Again, this is a national poll, and those who approve the law broken down by race, 70% of Caucasians support it versus 31% of Latinos. And 43% of Caucasians say immigration strengthens America versus 68% of Latinos who feel that way. The poll also asked how the president is doing. 38% of Caucasians approve of Mr. Obama's performance, while 68% of Latinos like the job he's doing.
We started conducting our own web poll to get your thoughts on SB 1070, but we had to pull the poll from our website. We learned that someone hijacked the poll, circumventing our blocks that keep people from voting multiple times. And to be balanced, we stopped the poll and we will not air what would have been skewed results. So there you have that.
Okay.
Coming up on this special edition of News 4 Tucson, a nation divided, our congressional delegation squares off.
Hear what Senator John McCain and Congressman Raul Grijalva say about SB 1070, and does the congressman regret calling for the boycott?
Welcome back. Arizona lawmakers are in the center of this national debate on immigration.
Senate Bill 1070 lit the fuse on some explosive new controversies, and the rumbles, those are being felt from Wickenburg to Washington. I sat down with Senator John McCain for his take on what's happening with this critical issue and about the controversy swirling around a fellow lawmaker.
And complete the dang fence.
It'll work this time.
Senator McCain's new campaign spot is all about immigration and border security, the spotlight issue now.
I want to emphasize, one of the charges against me is that I've changed my position. In 2007, I said we had to secure the borders first. Running for president in 2008, I said we had to secure the borders first. 2009, John Kyle and I said we had to have the National Guard to the border.
But McCain's opponents say the senator has suddenly shifted to the right on immigration when he said Arizona passed SB 1070 merely out of frustration. One person remarked, why didn't he say Arizonans passed it out of determination rather than frustration?
Because it's the federal government's responsibility to secure the borders. So the state of Arizona has insecure borders.
McCain pushed an immigration proposal in the Senate 4 years ago, the so-called amnesty bill, a measure even he says he wouldn't vote for now. Are there any regrets that maybe you didn't come pounding with a harder piece of legislation back then?
With the increase in violence since 2007, I have said we have to secure the borders first because the situation has changed. We have now drug cartels. We have now 22,000 Mexican citizens killed in the last 4 years. That we have to get our borders secured first.
Is immigration going to make or break this election for you?
Certainly immigration is a major issue when people in the southern part of my state do not live in a secure environment.
I asked McCain about Congressman Raul Grijalva's call for a boycott of this state over SB 1070. He wants selective targeting to get the message across, but really doesn't want to hurt Arizona's economy. Can you do that and not hurt Arizona's economy and Arizonans?
I don't know how you call for a boycott and not hurt the state. Congressman Grijalva will have to explain that for me.
Do you think he's piled on any damage that might have been done to the state over 1070?
I don't know how much damage is done, but it's incomprehensible to me that a member of Congress would want to hurt the economy of his state and the people he represents.
And Senator McCain told me what really angers him is the fact that so many in Washington are bashing Arizona's new law, never having even read the law. Well, now to Congressman Raul Grijalva. He adamantly opposes Arizona's new law on illegal immigration, and in a very controversial move has called for a boycott of certain Arizona businesses because of the new law. We asked the congressman about his position and reaction to it. How can you have a targeted temporary boycott of certain industries in Arizona and not hurt many Arizona businesses and employers with the ripple effect?
You can't. See, let's for a second. A convention not coming to Phoenix, its impact, I think, is minuscule compared to the impact that's already been done. I mean, when this governor signed this law, $3.7 billion a year come in retail sales and commerce from our neighbors to the south. That spigot is getting shut off as a reaction to this law.
Do you have any regrets at all over calling for a boycott here in Arizona?
If you want to call it a regret, and I'm not sure I'm ready to say that, but I think that we probably should have insisted that the industry take a much firmer position publicly. We're down to very few tools and be able to oppose this thing. We don't have the power in the legislature. That's controlled a different way. This is a democracy, but there is also protection for the minority. And when you say that you're going to have a law that essentially racially profiles, that you're going to have a law that is going to be challenged on its constitutionality, when you're going to have a law that seems more to be about retribution than anything else, when you're going to have a law that bars certain studies in this state, then there has to be a reaction.
What do you say to the fact that polls show roughly 71% of Arizonans favor SB 1070, and 17 other states now are considering similar measures?
I fundamentally believe that law is wrong. And if a poll says 70% or 56% or 59%, depending on which poll you're looking at, that's an opinion. But just because you have an opinion doesn't require me or anybody else to silence our opposition to it. I'm sure that if you'd done a poll in 58 or 59, 79% of the people in Alabama thought that segregation was a great idea.